I think if something is important enough for you to do, then you should have the motivation to be able to do it. I've had
Jacques Burger, the Chief of Operations Officer at Octoco.
They specialise in IoT, software development, hardware design, and strategic business consulting.
He speaks about the excitement of the tech world,
the importance of work-life integration, strategies for brand building and attracting investors, and the value of consistency for early-stage founders.
cases where for weeks I've just felt very unmotivated to do something, and I just had this thought and I got so excited about the prospect of what it could be that night I sat down and started writing the proposal and I started getting stuff in place.
And in terms of that balance, what do you do to ensure that there is a balance for you?
We talk a lot about work-life balance, but it's nice to get your career to a point where whatever you do is kind of an extension of yourself.
Doing something and not expecting anything in return. I think that is something that you don't find often.
When you cold outreaching, that's a push sales strategy. You want to create a pull strategy in some way. And the easiest way to do that is by
Jacques,
Naison.
Why do you do the work that you do?
Sure. Probably should have prepared for that question. I do think for a long time I saw myself working in probably a more corporate environment, coming out of engineering. Wasn't really aware of the tech space at all. And then kind of fell in love with, I'm not a techie myself. I think I should note that I'm more in the operational side of things, but I fell in love with the pace and the excitement of that world, constantly meeting new people. But the biggest thing for me is it gives you a vehicle where any idea you have on a random like Tuesday night sitting in your bed and that you can think of, the next day I can go out and I can go look at who do I know, who does what, how can we actually leverage this and make this idea a reality. And I think that's quite amazing for me. In my past experiences in if you want to call it more corporate environment, there is a lot more red tape and structures that prevents you sometimes from living out your crazy mad scientist ideas. So I think for me it's that freedom of whatever you can think of, you can try and do. So, yeah.
Do you think that is a driving force for many tech enthusiasts and early stage founders? It's that,
Yeah, probably. I think all of them a lot of them are probably also dreaming of the unicorn exit, which I don't necessarily think is the right mindset if you want to go into it, because it's not a guarantee and it's a long journey. So I think from at least the people I've met, a lot of them, definitely the driving force is having that freedom to do as you want, and also engage creatively with your work. I think we talk a lot about work-life balance, which is important, but it's nice to get your career to a point where your work and your life is integrated, but in a way which is truly enjoyable, where whatever you do is kind of an extension of yourself to a certain extent. So yeah, at least what I've seen, it's a big driving force.
And in terms of that balance, what do you do to ensure that there is a balance for you? And firstly, what does the balance mean for you?
Yeah.
And then maybe could you describe what you would do to ensure that you feel balanced?
I'm probably the worst person to ask this, because I've been in a controversial conversation around, I don't know how much I believe in work-life balance, because like I said, if it's fully integrated, then you can't really call it balance, can you? It's kind of your work is an extension of your personality in your life. Obviously there's dangers in that, and I'm still quite young despite my hair, so I think maybe I've still got the energy and the will to really push, but I think at the very least you're always going to have mundane stuff that you have to do, and that's not fun to do, and I think you have to make peace with that and work that into your schedule. But the biggest thing for me, at least, was recognizing when you're pushing too far. So when you just start out, especially in the startup world, there's kind of it's fun to have that 10 to 12 o'clock at night session that you put into work, and kind of you feel like you're getting stuff done, but it's not necessarily sustainable. So a while back, I think I realized consistency is more important than speed, in my opinion. You have to be fast, but you have to be, more importantly, you have to be consistent. So I've tried to schedule my work life around that, where if I can't get something done today, so long as I keep chugging away at it tomorrow, then I'll 5 o'clock clock out and I'll go do something else, and I'll pick it back up again tomorrow. So don't know if that answers your question, but in a roundabout way.
I think I never understood work-life balance, because for me, if I do something, I enjoy that thing.
Yeah.
And I think that, the work-life balance comes in when you're doing something that you don't enjoy, which over time, if you do something that you don't enjoy every day for a long period of time, it can lead to burnout. And therefore, I think, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but if you don't enjoy what you do and you do it for long periods of time, then perhaps you do need a work-life balance.
Yeah.
But I truly feel that, like you, if you integrate it, you can find that harmony of, work because you enjoy it, but also have hobbies,
Then I'm going to ask you a question, because I'm on the same page as you, but how I've been challenged is the question around, sure, you enjoy it now, but how do you prevent something that you love to become just a job? Because then the whole script flips, because then suddenly you used to enjoy something and you don't anymore. So do you think that's the case, or how do you prevent that?
I think there's always going to be 20% of things that you don't enjoy in that 100%, right? And as long as, for me, I know that 80% of what I'm doing, I'm enjoying it, I'll keep going.
Okay.
And maybe at the beginning stages is going to be that 20% is going to probably be 40%. Until you can get to a point where you can make enough money to employ, to delegate, to outsource, whatever it may be, so you can focus on that 80%. But I think it is important to maybe go back to basics, understand the driving force and your why. And if you are in alignment with that why, I think things can become easy. Speaking about why, I asked you that that was the first question. I think that helps me understand people better. And I think that another thing you mentioned was a lot of people are chasing this big unicorn exit. Do you think that's because of looking externally instead of internally, and focused a lot on the outside world instead of going within and finding out what you truly want?
Probably. I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I'd say that is an element. I think definitely, look, for some people that is the why. Like, I want money, that is the why. And then power to you, fair enough. But I think that really succeeds, because I don't know if the driving force is strong enough to keep you going when you don't have the money and when the investors pull out or something like that. So, yeah, I do think for me, if you are going to do it, finding that why is not always easy. In fact, I don't know if I have a clear definition of my own why. It's just I've kind of ignored stuff that I didn't enjoy and focused on stuff that I did enjoy, and somehow figured out, oh, this is what I enjoy. So I don't think you necessarily need to, like, just after university or whenever you start your startup journey, I don't think you necessarily have to have this deep conviction of, like, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, because it changes a lot. So I think it's more that case of really being aware of when something is really tiring for you to do and you really don't enjoy it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like, there's been a lot of stuff that I've had to do in my life which I absolutely hated, but it's fine, because you do find some solace in the hardship, where it's almost fun to be able to look back and say, yes, that was hard, but we got through it. So I don't like advocate for, once something gets hard, don't do it. But if you consistently find yourself doing something and you're just not getting any joy out of it, at least what I've tried to do is structure my life around it, where either get someone else to do it who does enjoy it and then focus on something else, or look at what you don't enjoy and find the elements of it and interrogate which elements are fun and how can you then kind of put more focus on that It's kind of the Pareto principle in my mind ties into that around the 80-20. I believe strongly, like, focus on the 20% that matters. So similarly, focus on the 20% that you really enjoy, and then that will slowly grow over time, and you'll find yourself doing that more and more.
And you mentioned those difficult times and you kind of pushed through. What do you think allowed you to continue?
Sheer ignorance. I know, is actually looking back now and thinking to myself how little you knew and how you did not know what the path was ahead. You kind of need that. If you have to start something knowing how difficult it's going to be, then you will never start. So ignorance, I truly think, is a big part of it. But outside of that, I do think, at least for me, a value for myself has been I value tough stuff, like hard stuff. And it has to have an end. Like, it is quite terrible when it keeps being like tough and hard. But there is a deep, what do you call it? I want to say solace, but a deep satisfaction in doing something hard and then figuring it out. And the more you do that, the more you find small things that you don't want to do, and you actually manage to successfully complete that task, and you get that kick of dopamine or whatever. The easier it is when you start a new difficult task, because there is that little reward at the end if you get through it. So.
And in terms of lots of individuals have these big dreams and ideas of what they want to do, but due to a number of reasons they don't do it. What is that last push for them to actually do it? And it's a vague question, and it applies very broadly. But I guess what I'm trying to allude to is getting that individual to just take action.
Well, old adage of journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, that thing. But I think if something is important enough for you to do, then you should have the motivation to be able to do it. I've had cases where for weeks I've just felt very unmotivated to do something. And then the incubator we spoke about, I was driving in my car back from work, kind of bored with what I was doing at the moment. And I just had this thought, and I got so excited about the prospect of what it could be, that night I sat down and started writing the proposal and started getting stuff in place. And then it took a very long time for it to actually gain momentum. But that first step was, while I was excited about it, I really just leaned into it and got something down. And it's weird, once you put something out there in the world, like, somehow it will find the right people and it starts growing. So I think from that first day, had the idea, left it for like 2 weeks on my computer, just started chatting to people about it. It became an interesting topic of conversation for me when I met with people, like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And that kind of created external factors that kept pulling the project forward. So it was that first initial internal step of capitalizing on the excitement of an idea, and then as quickly as possible, just starting to roll that idea off other people. And then that creates pulling factors, because now you've kind of committed to some people and they want results. So now you have to do it. So
what I'm hearing from that is incentives drive behavior. You're excited about getting of the possibility of what it could be, and therefore you did it. You were incentivized of it was that feeling of not any specific reward, but in this case the reward was the excitement of what it could be. Going into Octoco, how has your role changed from when you first started to now?
So when I first started, I actually got involved with them very early on, where I wanted to start my own company. And at that stage, they were, I think, 6 months old, and they kind of took chances on everyone where they invested in people, and then kind of tried to grow businesses. So I had my own company, which they covered my salary for a while I was trying to build up this company. Still going today, but no, not entirely successful. You can't do 3 things at once, I've learned, but unless you, I guess, Elon Musk. But so I did the company there. It was around process optimization and automation. But then as they grew quickly, they became kind of my best client, even though they were my investor, because they needed some process work and operational support. So I started doing that, and then after a while, I was like, okay, well, I'm spending 90% of my time at the company. Why didn't I just start? So then started in an operations manager kind of role, which was an arbitrary title because there were only like 10 people. So it's kind of just, you are the only non-tech person. So then I had to do sales, HR, marketing kind of processes. Really loved that. I found out, even though I did engineering, I really enjoyed the brand building side of things, and the marketing strategies and stuff was deeply interesting. And it's something I never knew I enjoyed. So it's quite cool in a position where you get exposed to stuff, especially in a startup. You have to do stuff that you never would have done otherwise. And then you learn what you like and don't like. And so started running a lot of the operations, which kind of grew. And as the team grew, started hiring more people, and then ultimately reached to I guess, COO. But again, I feel like the title is, it's just, I oversee the marketing strategy, the HR, the sales, the project management. So all of those strategies you basically move to a more strategic level rather than the everyday nitty gritty implementing ClickUp for the project management. You look at the higher level strategy. Yeah.
Got you. And over time, how are you guys able to refine and kind of like niche on this is what we're focusing on? I think that's the first part. And the second part is, lots of early stage founders want to do everything. Of course, just to bring in some revenue, especially if you're bootstrapping. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so it's funny because we never did refine. We see ourselves now as specialist generalists. Look, there's a lot of debate in the industry around specialist versus generalist. I think South Africa as a country, at least when we were in the Netherlands, they are an exceptionally specialist focused business environment. So if you need something, you hire a specialist. Where in South Africa, because there's limited resources, I think we truly do have exceptional generalists. You can find a really good engineer, and you can ask him to figure something out, and he will find something that works. And a lot of the times, I think there's a lot of value in that. So for Octoco, at least, so we do more than 10 industries, like medtech, agri-tech, edtech, energy, insurance tech. It all sounds very broad and like very generalist, but at the end of the day, like all of those industries share, like tech has become so ingrained that they share common IP. At the end of the day, there's certain business rules that you layer on top of the tech that is specific to that industry, and then obviously regulatory differences. But the base of spinning up a Flutter app with AWS server is like, you can do that for any industry. You don't have to be a specialist. Well, you have to be a specialist in that, but it can apply to a lot of industries. But what happened with Octoco is our motto was, we want to build cool shit in less dumb ways. And I was like, that's where we started. So, and our competencies were, we had very good electronic engineers and then very good software engineers. So we did a lot of software, so mobile apps through to cloud architecture, data pipelines, all of the buzzwords, AI. But then we also had the hardware component, so PC board development, electronic design, and IoT, which is then the integration between them. So suddenly we sat with the entire service supply chain, from like your PC board through to your networking, through to your end user mobile app. So it is broad, but understanding that whole supply chain, I believe you can kind of specialize in. So, but just to finish the point, where we had to then also extend to is the fundraising support part of things, because I told you like 32% of our clients are startups and none of them have money. So we just want to build cool shit, but we have to somehow find money for these companies so they can pay for the services. And then we had to do like fundraising support and stuff like that. So you kind of go where you have to go. Sorry, that was the first part of your question. I can't remember the second.
No, I guess you kind of answered the second part as well.
Okay.
Speaking about, South Africans being generalists. Another question I had was, being a service-based company, how would you guys price your services accordingly? What kind of metrics do you look at for pricing?
So that's been a lot of trial and error, in that we started out as cheap as possible just to get clients. And then you do benchmark, you look at competitors, you try and find certain price points. And I think we also worked off of, because we mostly a services company, you have to have a margin on the hours of your employee, the salary of your employees. So we were there was a specific baseline around, well, this is how much we pay our developers. We need to make a specific margin on top of that in order to survive. So our hourly rate has to be at least a minimum of. So we started with that minimum bill-out rate. And then it's supply and demand. So the more work you get in, the more you can start pushing that number. And one or two times you'll push it a bit too far, and a client will say, well, sorry, you're too expensive. And then so you find that middle ground. But it has been a bit of a trial and error process.
I think being in a competitive market, do you think that the selling point is your speciality, or is it the people that actually get that deal over the line?
That's a good question, because I still flip-flop between the two, but I think it's both. I think it's both. I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but 100% in the service industry, your network and your customer relationships are unbelievably important. The first 3 years of our company, it was pure referrals. We didn't do any outbound sales, and it was just by project success and referrals, which was massively helpful. And then we also made a few critical partners along the way where someone gave us a chance and we kind of really pulled off the project in a stellar way, and then they give you more opportunity for more work. So very important, but the key there is when we were presented with those opportunities to work, we had a really good team with a great skill set to execute. And if you consistently don't execute, then it's going to catch up with you. So that's why it's both. You can't just have the one, be an expert in the corner somewhere, no one knows about you, but you can't. People do get far with only networking, but I've seen that catches up at some stage.
Got you. So, when you get that opportunity, ensure that you're offering value.
Yeah.
And just a follow-up question on that. So you're growing the team, company's expanding, but now there's a fine balance between your operational costs are increasing. So now you have to ensure that there's enough fuel that's coming in to ensure that the car keeps on going. How did you guys find that balance between getting enough in and deciding when to then make your next hire?
So we are trialing this idea, and I'll chat to you in 5 years' time and we'll see if it worked. But when we started out with this, that was probably the main thing, at least around consulting services, but it's with any company, your operational costs scale, but at least with a product-based company, it's different. And that's why we've also invested into products, because we want to get that product revenue also going. But for the consulting side of things, we've kind of drawn a line in the sand. And so Octoco Consulting is only around 35 people, but Octoco Group is almost 70 people.
Wow.
So what we've said is, once you surpass 40 to 50 people in a consulting firm, you need 2 of everything, and your operational costs go up and management goes up. It's a lot more difficult to manage. We've streamlined operations within Octoco Consulting so much where with a team of 35, we're running 26 simultaneous projects, ranging in size, obviously, but so basically very optimal operations, and we keep it at that number. So how do we expand is the question then. We prefer spinning out companies with their own CEO and management team that fall under the Octoco Group. So for instance, at a stage we realized we needed UI UX services because we're building software for people, but we don't have that. So we could either hire a team of 10 UI UX experts, but we got a young entrepreneur who came in. He was a consultant for us on software, really liked the guy, and he had a background in UI UX and software, and he said he wanted to start the company. So he started, Jonathan is his name, he started Inkblot Design. And we obviously invested in that. So we spun that out as a unit of Octoco. It's its own entity run by Jonathan with its own cost point and budget and everything. He owns a part of it. But now we get access to those services. But we don't have that, like they run their overheads separately. And they are also able to consult to other companies. So they're not restrained to Octoco. And then the last one was Polymorph Systems, where we didn't spin them out, we acquired them, but it was on the basis of we needed product owner, like real product experts, which we are more technical than product. And they had a team of excellent product managers and owners, as well as developers, and we also wanted 1 or 2 extra developers. So we acquired them, but they've got their own management team and stuff. So I think in that way it works because those companies can grow outside of Octoco, and it's all part of the group. But it does come with challenges of having segmented management teams, and like sharing company culture becomes difficult because those are effectively their own companies. So yeah, I think it's an interesting model. So far it's been working well, and what it's done is it's really de-risked our scaling. I think a lot of tech companies post-COVID scaled so much and they had to retrench a lot of people, and we've never had to do that. So hopefully we can continue like that. Yeah.
And you mentioned there, acquiring a few companies or one company that you mentioned. What did you learn from that M&A process?
Yeah, very interesting. I think what made it easy was Polymorph is a technopark company, and very aligned in terms of values, company values. So that was the first thing. I think the first 3 meetings was nothing around numbers or anything. It was just company values. How do you do business? What's your typical client look like? And that made it a lot easier. I think if you're not aligned on company values and goals, it's going to be difficult. What I have learned is when you do a deal like this, you have to be really anal on the details, because people get excited about a deal, and we'll chat, and you get so excited. We chat about all the prospects of where we're going with this, and you kind of glance over the stuff that can be sticking points because you want to get this over the line. But I think with our acquisition now, it was actually nice to have their team was also quite adamant around the details around, okay, well, how exactly is this going to work? Who do we report to? How do we, in the media, how do we position it? There's a lot of that stuff that you kind of forget because you just want to get going. So and then lastly, I think it's aligning the cultures. So we're still in the process. I mean, we acquired them, I think 2 months ago, but so far it's been relatively easy. But aligning cultures is obviously, I can definitely see that being quite a big of a sticking point.
How did you guys figure all of this out?
I'm still figuring it out as I'm talking to you. I'm thinking of stuff that probably I should go do this. No, look, again, back to that whole ignorance thing. I made a joke the other day with someone where it said the people that I've seen really make it they have unbridled self-confidence with just a smidge of self-loathing. Like, you need that thing of like really backing yourself to do something and to say like, listen, if I'm not going to do it, no one else is going to do it. Like, surely I can figure it out. But at the same stage, when you go home at night, I've had countless nights where I would say something in a meeting with a lot of confidence, and you would lie there, you're like, yes, does that really make sense? So really questioning yourself, I think, is important. And then taking action on if you do find your way of doing to not work. Don't double down just to double down. Like, rather come out and say, okay, well, this didn't work. We've got a big culture at Octoco around fail fast, iterate quickly. So even on operational stuff, we'll try new HR stuff. We'll tell the team, listen, we're going to try a new performance evaluation method. Like, we think these are the reasons why we're doing it. we give it a shot, and then 2 months later, we get feedback. If it didn't work, we take what worked and you change it. But you have to be willing to change.
How long are those iterative processes that you test things for?
It depends. The shortest one ever was 2 days, where everyone just shat on the idea. So we had to change it very quickly. So it was a terrible idea of mine. We wanted to change the way we logged time, and then developers were just like, "Listen, we've got anyway." So that was around 2 days, but usually it takes at least a month to 3 months to trial something.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake that people make is if it's not working after 3 or 4 days, then they're like, "Okay, cool, we need a change." But I feel like you have to have some data that you are either continuing by or completely pivoting by. I want to go into early stage founders and some topics that I find that you would perhaps shed some light on. And the first is validation. So you mentioned to me that these founders would come to you with these cool ideas, and then you guys would just build it and not do that validating part. What mistakes do these founders make when it comes to the validation phase?
So with the validation, I think we were always very strict on technical validation. So if you come to us with some blockchain idea, and we've done a lot of work on the blockchain, but if it's not technically feasible, we'll tell you that very soon. But and people understand that. People are, and clients, a lot of times clients aren't technical. So if you tell them a little bit of technical jargon, then they kind of believe you. So that was always easy to navigate the kind of, okay, I don't think we should do this, rather use this stack, it's going to be more beneficial or sustainable. But for some reason, not some reason, I understand why, but clients are far more skeptical of product validation, of is this thing going to sell? Is this thing, do you have a target audience? All of that, because 2 reasons. I think the first is a lot of clients build products in industries that they've worked in. So they get some or other idea in the industry after working in it for 5 to 10 years, and they really think they've got a good idea and they want to build it. And the last thing they want is someone to tell them, well, maybe we should validate your product first, because they feel like it's been validated. But just because you see a gap doesn't necessarily, like, there's still 1,000 questions around what exactly your product should look like in order to fulfill that need in that gap. So clients skip on that. And the other one is, I think, the feeling of, well, if you know so much about sales, why don't you just build the product type of thing? Like, if it's that old thing about, like, how can you tell me that you have the answer to sales or to product market fit? And I think the key component there for them to understand is, no one can give you the answer, because, like I said, then they would just build it, and if they knew 100% it's going to work, then just build it yourself. So what's like Polymorph, for instance, does is they take you through a very structured process of challenging assumptions, because at the end of the day, product market fit and sales and all of that is predicated on a bunch of assumptions around what you think this thing will do. So going through a process of challenging each of those assumptions, gathering real-world data from users in a survey, and then making a recommendation. At the end of the day, we say, well, these are without a doubt the biggest risks that we've identified. These are what we think mitigation strategies might be. But you have to decide, as the founder, you'll still have to decide. But then at least you have some real-world data to work with and improve the chances of success. But it's not guaranteed success, though.
Why do people just focus on their solution and not dig deeper for the problem side of things?
I think it's that mentality of, I'm going to build something so cool that people will just use it. Because people still live in a world where they like Facebook is that thing we all grew up with, where it just boomed out of nowhere. And very few people actually understand the fundraising world and understand that almost all startups and unicorns that went through these fundraising processes and product market fit and validation processes. So I've seen a lot of clients, the joke in the office is everyone wants to build either an Uber for or a Tinder for XYZ. So we said we're going to build an Uber for Tinder or Tinder for Uber. I don't know yet. But that business model is like the perfect example of the mistake people make, where they just assume I'm going to match 2 services, and for people it's going to be so cool that everyone's just going to download it because it's a no-brainer. and they don't realize how much user friction there is to change user behavior, and how to really how much marketing needs to be done to push a product into market and to have people use it. Especially where in today's world you are flooded with a million apps. It's difficult. So yeah, I think that's probably a part of the answer.
Got you. Yeah. And going into that post-marketing strategy, what have you noticed that founders do that have been successful when they've built the app, launched, and there's been good traction?
I think by far, you're going to, at least in my experience, you're going to struggle with pure guerrilla marketing. Like in today's world, the trend is founder-led marketing, which I'm not a big fan of, but there is a lot of validity to it. But so to validate my point around guerrilla marketing, I think partnerships are still distribution partnerships, and people forget so because we do a lot of hardware, we do a lot of work in distribution and supply chain and manufacture. Well, we don't manufacture, but we understand that space, and understanding that space, it's interesting in the software space. People forget that software also has distribution. You're not just going to upload this thing to the Play Store and people are going to buy it. But distribution looks differently. It's partnerships with, like, if you have a fintech business, you want to partner with Easy Equities or with a Capitec Bank or something. You need someone with an existing client base to distribute your product. So for me, the marketing is almost secondary to distribution. But to give you an idea of marketing, we invested in a company called Henlo Coffee. So they made South Africa's very first full barista machine with a bunch of electronics that we built around measuring flavor profiles. It's a very interesting machine, so go check out Henlo Coffee.
The same one that Vida has.
So to the Vida point, we spent like 3 or 4 years trying to get this thing into market. The first working prototype was like, I think 2 years ago. Just kept pushing, trying to find a partner. And once he got the Vida Cafe deal, and there was a post made of that single post, he got a 300% increase in sales.
Wow.
From one post. So it's distribution. And you can't cheat that type of marketing. You can try, well, some people can, but yeah. So
I guess the next question would be then is, how do you get to those individuals that make those decisions?
Yeah, again, if I had the answer, I would do it. Look, I'm a big believer in organic growing your network organically. We've tried some like LinkedIn automation stuff, and there is merit to it, and it does work to a certain extent, so long as you do it in an authentic way. But mostly those types of individuals, you're not going to get through a LinkedIn message. Maybe if you have something really interesting to ask them. But I think looking back on my career so far, even though it's quite short-lived still, it's weird the way I got to certain people in my network. And I think what it boils down to, there's no magic sauce or something, but every point of connection, I made sure that I had a real interest in what that person was doing, and I was excited about it, and I could engage on it in a deeper way than just like trying to use it as a stepping stone. And a lot of times you don't even know it's a stepping stone. You meet someone and you just chat with them about a cool idea you have, and then you realize, oh, but they actually know this person who knows this person. But it comes down to it's difficult to cheat authentic interest in someone's work that they're doing. So just be authentic, really kind of be interested in it, and somehow people will get to you. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point of authenticity. And what I've noticed is also some individuals come across as too salesy and just want instead of actually this is the benefit for you. And another thing that I also noticed was, you don't have to go directly to that decision maker, but who's close to that decision maker that you can get to that is in the decision maker's ear. And you get to that person.
Never underestimate a PA. Never ever do that. But sorry, to your point there on want. Look, I've made sales mistakes where you like at a networking event and you've got to make a sale and you try to, and it never works. And you have to go through that to learn the lessons. So it's not like I'm this sage and guru. I'm still making these mistakes. But the one thing I have seen is the amount of free work I have done is insane. I don't know if you remember the Shark Tank investment event that we did that whole event for free. Like we organized everything, and for me, I was like, it's fun because it's a great learning experience. I made great connections. And I don't think we made a single like direct sale from that event. But from that event, like the conversations I had after that and the next ones and the next ones and the next ones, you grow your network so much that somewhere something sticks. The whole incubator idea basically came from the Shark Tank event. I don't know if I will do it for free again, but there is value in first giving before asking.
I guess it also goes to your earlier point about consistency. Just that one free event now has led to potentially other cool things in the pipeline. I want to get into fundraising, but before I do, you guys also work with individuals that want to build product, hardware, right? So that individual who now is bootstrapping and low on capital, how does that individual go and find prototyping to then go and test? I mean, you can bootstrap a software business, but hardware.
Yeah, but you can. But even the software, we've had quite a few clients who they're not technical founders, so they can't bootstrap it. And then the only answer there is either find a friendly uncle who's an angel investor, or find a co-founder who is technical and that has the time to actually build the prototype for you. On the hardware side, hardware is a lot more difficult because you've got not only the software kind of components that can go wrong or the firmware components that can go wrong, but then you've got supply chain issues where you have to order stuff from China and assembly and manufacturing, like hardware stuff. Most of my hair loss is from hardware. So I've rarely seen someone manage to bootstrap hardware. I think Henlo Coffee would be the closest one, but the way he managed to do it was he still had to get an angel for some of the development, and then we invested sweat equity. So we did around 2,000 hours of development on that thing, sweat, so work in exchange for equity. And that's about it. I think the only other way would be to find a corporate partner who, I doubt that a VC would invest in you if you don't have a prototype and hardware. So if you can find a corporate partner who actually has a similar problem that they're looking to solve through hardware and who are willing to put money behind it so they can basically solve their problem, but you can start your business. And the best example of that is PickLogger. Actually, at the event we had yesterday, Errol from PickLogger spoke. So it's for an agri-tech company. They're a big agri-tech corporate, but they saw a gap in the market for a hardware product that would enhance their services. But they created like a whole thing around it so that product can now sell outside of the company, but it solves a specific niche for them, which is a nice funding structure. But then you have to play the corporate game and you need the connection. So yeah.
Got you. And for that, let's call them an early stage founder. Product is built, have some traction. At what point would you advise that individual to then go and fundraise? Or why is fundraising, firstly, let's start at the basics. Why is it necessary?
Because people need to eat. From what I've seen and what I've learned is, at least in the VC market today, no VC is investing. Very few VCs are investing in pre-revenue ideas, hence the whole incubator thing. But so you probably won't be able to fundraise before you have an MVP in the market generating revenue. Angel, you can do whenever, depending on how much equity you want to give up. And I don't have the answer to that. Some founders want to retain more equity. A good strategy for that is to start with how much equity do I want to retain upon Series A and Series B. And I'm thinking of raising for Series A, I'm thinking of raising X amount. So for me to retain that amount, I need to retain X during seed, this amount during pre-seed, and this amount during angel. So you work back. And And why do we need to fundraise? Well, yeah, the short answer is because you can't build something without someone paying for it, unless you are yourself taking. So your options are capital or time. So that's Octoco. I've done a lot of time investments because it is still risky, but it's slightly easier than capital, especially when you are smaller. But that's why you, as a co-founder, it's very good to have a technical co-founder. If you are going into tech. If it's not tech, just get an industry expert as a co-founder with connections and stuff. And the more of your own time you can put in, the better. But
So let's take another scenario. I'll give you another scenario where this individual has been sending out pitch decks. They've been contacting. I mean, I've done this in the past. Just reached out to so many people. One, you don't get any feedback, and two, if you do get feedback, it's not what you're looking for, or even if I do the homework of this is exactly the fund that is in alignment with my business. I think I'm alluding to once more, what else does that individual need to do besides cold calling and sending out cold messages?
I think there's two answers to that. So the first is not a nice answer, but it's from personal experience. I've learned this, where I was way too eager, way too early, and I thought I was way further than I really was with the stuff. So we tried to do autonomous security drones at a stage, and I was like convinced, how is someone not investing in this product? Looking back now, we didn't sort out the supply chain, the maintenance, anything like that. So there's so much that we still had to do. And I think a lot of people ignored me rightfully. Like I would have also ignored me at that stage. So I think you have to make sure that you really are confident in what you've done. I think from what I've seen, investors appreciate people who have really kind of put in some time. And a lot of the time, it feels to me, I've seen investors almost treating it not like a game, but they're kind of like, I like this guy, but I want him to tread a little bit more water. So that being said, I do think a more practical answer, because obviously all I told you is don't talk to them. But if you want to talk to them, I think a practical answer is you're almost never gonna reach them through just a cold outreach. That industry is predicated on personal connections and knowing the right people. I think something like your podcast, for instance, is a great way of building that brand and getting recognized. But to your earlier point, actually, around how do you reach these individuals? And I told you around being interested in the one thing that I've done quite a lot is I do a ton of referrals of my own. So like I'm really interested in connecting people, and I don't take anything for it. When I just started out, I wanted to sign a referral agreement with everyone, but like kind of realized it's a waste of time. So there's a lot of value in listening to what people need, and when you're sitting and chatting to someone, in your head being like, oh, I know this guy, or I know this guy, and connecting those people. And in a weird way, you'll find somehow someone will connect you at some stage. So still not as practical, but that's as practical as I can get, I guess.
mean, what you're also speaking about is doing something and not expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
I think that is specifically in the business world something that you don't find often.
And it is easier when your business is financially secure. But when you are busy drowning, it's kind of like, I'm already drowning.
True.
The common goal is when you cold outreaching, that's a push sales strategy. You want to create a pull strategy in some way. Like a podcast, for instance, is a pull strategy. Like you start pulling people towards you. So, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So I think if someone really needs to reach specific investors or stuff, try and create some form of a pull. Don't just try to push stuff to them. Make it interesting for them to chat to you. And the easiest way to do that is by introducing people and giving more than you take. But there are more practical stuff depending on your industry and what you're doing. There's various marketing and sales strategies that you can do to create a pull mechanism.
Got you. Especially now with, being able to develop a personal brand for yourself on social media. Of course, it takes time away from your actual work, but it's a pull.
It is.
I think
100%.
That's a really good tip. So the last part of the podcast is a fast fire. So I'm just going to ask you quick questions, and I would appreciate maybe
quick answers.
Maybe a sentence.
Okay.
If you could build a product or a business right now, what would it be? And you can't pick drone technology, security.
I would never choose that again. A technology business or product. Now, it would relate to something in the restaurant space and splitting my bill. Not to make money, just to solve my own problems. But I don't have them. I know. I'm so frustrated with bill splitting. We're trying to like calculate how to. But no, there are people doing that. I don't have a $1 billion idea in my head currently around tech. But I would say definitely in the line of IoT, sensor industry 4.0. I think there's a lot to be done there.
If you could invest $10 million into a startup that's based in Africa, what type of startup would that be?
I know, but I can't tell you because we're busy with it. I think there's still a lot of opportunity. It's a difficult space, but the payment and banking space in Africa, I think there's a lot of underserved areas, and I think it's a very difficult space. But if the idea is good enough in banking and payments in Africa, I think there's a lot that can happen there still.
Got you. Even with the amount of fintech companies that are...
Yeah, that's why I said, like, it depends on the idea, obviously. Okay. But the reason there's so many fintech companies is because there is something to be solved. Someone is just looking to solve it. But the payment supply chain is huge. So it just depends on where you slot into the supply chain.
One piece of advice to early stage founders.
I think consistency is key. Yeah. I pick consistency over brute strength. Yeah, brute force.
That's some good advice. Next steps. What's in the pipeline? Personally, professionally, what could you share with us?
Well, I have to stand on my own advice of integrating work life. So professional and personal is very much the same for me currently. But the early stage incubator we want to create in Technopark. I'm looking to launch that early next year, probably only end of next year, but I'm gonna say early next year. That's for me, and personally, that's also for me a big thing because it's something I'm truly passionate about, and I would love to get Stellenbosch to a place where becoming a startup founder is like a viable career option. Because I don't know about you, but I feel most of us in the startup space somehow ended up here by a fluke. So,
yeah, that's. For me, it was not easy, and I guess I speak for many. But
there's an argument to be made that it shouldn't be easy. There is a lot of people arguing like you can't incubate because like people have to be there because they've really proven themselves to want to be there. So we'll see. We'll test that hypothesis.
Got you. Jacques, thank you. This was super insightful.
Thanks.
I enjoyed this conversation.
Appreciate it.
And yeah, looking forward to that incubator and what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you.